Audio Jungle. Ah!
What's up, everybody? This is your boy Blue here, and this week I'm glad to present to you a Blues Budget Brews. For those of you that don't remember because it's been a while or you just don't know at all, this is my Budget Commander deck series. This week it's brought to you by a customer who actually purchased a deck that was an off-the-cuff brew. They asked for a budget deck, but their budget was higher than my normal budget. So we're going to go ahead and go over the deck because this is a personal video for him, but you all get to enjoy it as well. I'll go over the deck with everything, and then I will also give you a small upgrade section at the end like I do with all of my decks. So let's go ahead and get started. The brew is actually Niv-Mizzet Parun. He is the 3 red, 3 blue commander that is a 5/5 that says this spell can't be countered. It has flying, which is always good. And then whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet Parun deals a damage to any target, and then whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. So we all know that the build has been done before by me. I did it for another customer at one point in time. They had a higher budget. This one's much lower than that one. This one actually is a little bit under double what my normal budget brew decks are. So normally they're 40. This one, the customer asked for between 60 and 80, and I hit that $70 to $75 mark for this one. So it's just under double of what I normally do. So I'll go over the deck, tell you what the strategy is. It's pretty straightforward and simple, and then we'll get into a upgrade section. So let's go ahead and show you the deck, and then we'll get started after that. So with all my budget brew decks, we know that I start with the lands. So we'll start off with Command Tower. Obviously, you need to be able to hit 2 colors, so Command Tower is a must in this one. Temple of Epiphany, dual colored, also lets you scry. That's quite important in a deck like this because you definitely are going to be wanting to get the right cards on the top. Now remember, this was a budget brew, and unfortunately, specifically red, blue, or is it colors? Man, all the duels were expensive as hell, and it didn't fit the budget to go with the rest of the deck, so I'm leaving that up to them to go ahead and do so. So I put in there the ones that I could put in there on a budget. So we got the Snowland one, which is Volatile Fjord. So it's blue-red. It's a snowland in case that matters. Switzwater Cliffs, Prismary Campus for the Scry. Again, Scry is very important when you're doing nothing but drawing cards, and that's what this deck is going to do. Is it Guildgate, Highland Lake? Is it Boilerworks? There's no combo with this. I'm sure there can be, but there's no combo with it yet. It's just for the dual colors. Lonely Sandbar for the cycling, because again, drawing cards. It's a theme here. Remote Isle for the 2 colors, way to cycle it out. Mystic Sanctuary, because there's a lot of instants in this deck. So, a couple sorceries too. Forgotten Cave for more cycling, and Smoldering Crater, again, for more cycling. Drawing cards is the theme here. Surtland Frostpire, so comes into play tapped and adds a red. But for 2 blue and a red, you can sacrifice it. Scry 2, obviously important, and then it deals 2 damage to each creature. That's important too because you need to be able to wipe the board, and there's not a lot of defense in this deck, so that's a way to go. And then of course you can activate it only as a sorcery. Ash Barrens, again, more cycling, but at least this time when you cycle it, you get to go get a land. Myriad Landscape. So red-blue doesn't have a lot of ramp options, so I had to find it any way I could. This is one of them. Tectonic Edge, because I always want to put at least 1 land in every deck that I build for Commander that has the way to remove an opponent's land, because there are some problem lands out there. And then I think it's 9 islands and 9 mountains to finish out the land section. Again, this had to fit the budget. This is just under the budget, so those are the lands. The ramp section is going to be really bad because blue-red has no ramps. So the options I went with were obviously a Soul Ring and an Arcane Signet because they're the 2 kings of ramp in all decks. Environmental Sciences, while not actually ramp because it doesn't put it into play, at least it's mana fixing, and it helps you gain life to keep you alive longer. So it was the best options I could come up with. And then, of course, I used the creature for the other part of it, which is Burnished Heart, because while it's 3 to cast and it's a 2/2, you can also sacrifice it to go get 2 basic land cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, and that's another thing. The basic lands are in here. There's a multitude of basic lands only because I needed to be able to go grab them, and I believe this also searches for a basic land. And again, not a lot of options for searching. So that's the very small ramp/mana fixing section that this deck has. The creature section, it's not that thick. They're all utility in some way, shape, or form. So we start with Psychosis Crawler. This is actually a alternate kill if you don't have your commander out. So its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your hand. So the way this deck runs, it should always be at least a 7/7. But it's whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life. This alone, if you get enough draw going, you can wipe the table. Always good. Lab Maniac, because you're going to be drawing a lot of your deck. So this is an accidental win con. So in case, you just happen to draw out your own deck, you can win that way. Murmuring Mystic, because there's a lot of instants and sorceries in this deck to be cast. So this creates a wall of blockers so that you can keep your health up. So it creates 1/1 flyers, so the ultimate blockers are just 1/1 flying fodder. Blister, Spit, Gremlin. It deals a damage to each opponent when you tap it, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, i.e. an instant or sorcery in this case, you can untap them so you can get multiple shots in with them. This deck is all about casting spells and pinging your opponent to death. So, Young Pyromancer, another option that I had to put in here to put a wall out of defenders. Now, the good thing is that you're casting enough, and if you have enough things out that create enough creatures, you also create an army that could possibly swing in for the win going wide, so that's always an option too. Firebrand Archer, 2 to cast 2/1, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell again, that includes instants and sorceries, it deals the damage to each opponent, more pinging. So do you see where that's going, where you can literally ping your opponents to death if you don't have your commander out? Thermo Alchemist, another one, it's a defender, 03, so it's a wall for the most part. Has a big ass so that it can block bigger creatures. Then it also taps to deal damage to each opponent, and then again, whenever you cast an instance or sorcery, you can untap it. So remember, you get that pinging effect going. Gutter Snipe, another option for that too. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. You can see where this theme is going, all right? Merchant of the Veil is in here, basically not for the creature, but it's nice to have a 30 cast 2/3. It's got a big ass, so it can defend for you. It's here for the haggle, so for 1 red, you can discard a card and draw a card. You're going to see a lot of that. It's looting effects. There's going to be quite a few of them in here. The good part is it's a 2/3 again, so it has a nice defense, and then it also has the ability built into it so that you can pay 3, discard a card, and draw a card. It helps you keep drawing cards, so Niv-Mizzet can keep triggering. New addition for this is one of the extra little text that I put in here, was Mad Ratter. So it's a 4 to cast 1/2. It does die to a lot of removal spells, I get that not having a 3 defense kills it, but whenever you draw your second card each turn, create 2 1/1 black rat token creatures. So anything like a Faithless Looting on an opponent's turn, sorry, that's a sorcery. Throw a Possibility, I think, is the instant where you discard a card, draw 2. Mad Ratter will go off, and you'll get 2 at an instant speed. So it's always nice to be able to create tokens at instant speed. Locust God was another one I put in here. So 6 to cast 4/4, flying. Always good to have flying defense. Whenever you draw a card, which this deck does a lot of, again, creating another 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. So that's the bigger surprise, is that with the haste, you can also, again, amass a really big army to go wide. Always good to have options, especially in a, what people would do is target Niv-Mizzet, effectively killing most decks that are Niv-Mizzet decks. You got to find ways around that. And that's what I tried to do here. It also has a built-in ability to draw a card, then discard a card, so more looting effects. And then whenever Locust God dies, you can return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next upkeep. So a little bit of resilience there. And then obviously I put in some redundancy in this deck. So Niv-Mizzet the Firemind, so it's 2 red, 2 blue, and 2. Almost the same abilities as the Parun. So it's a 4/4 flyer, and then whenever you draw a card, it deals damage to any target. Looks familiar, doesn't it? And then you can tap it to draw a card. So those are the creatures I've included in this just to have a little bit of resiliency and to have alternate win cons when needed, okay? As far as the big section here, this is all the instants and sorceries, and I'm sure by now you can tell this is just going to be everything that you can do to draw cards. And it is. So, obviously we start off with Brainstorm because it lets you draw 3 cards, 3 damage right off the bat, and if you have other things out that help you deal damage, it's a lot more. Obsessive Search, because there are looting effects in here, and the madness can actually be paid to draw the card after it's discarded. This is great fodder for things like Faithless Looting or Throw of Possibility. Peek lets you look at somebody's hand in case you want to have that knowledge. Trust me, in Commander, it's probably nice to be able to look at the blue player's hand. Opt, always nice cheap, 1 to cast. Scry's 1, obviously you like to be able to top deck stuff that you want, and then you draw a card. Think twice, because you can do it more than once. Obviously you draw a card, and then you can flash it back. Radical Idea, same idea. You get to draw twice off of 1 card at different times. Deliberate, I actually started to like this card a lot more. It's 2 to cast instant, lets you scry 2 and then draw a card. There are no substitutes for this one as of yet, I haven't found. See Beyond lets you draw 2 cards, and then you can shuffle a card from your hand into your library. This is here just because I wanted 2 to cast to draw 2. The more cards you can draw from each one, the better. Everdream was here for the splicing. You can splice onto an instant or sorcery. You're going to be casting a lot of them, so you get the extra card draw. Or you can just cast it to draw a card. Same theory with Think Twice was Glimpse of Freedom, so you can escape it to do it over and over again. Obviously, you're sacrificing your graveyard for that, though. Divination, and I guess it's going to have Council of Sortami, I forgot about that. 2 sorceries that let you draw 2 cards at one time. Again, I'm trying to include more cards that let you draw multiple cards for as cheap as possible in one spell. Field Research, that's a different card. 3 to cast sorcery. Again, same thing as Council of Sortami. However, this one has a kicker where you can also draw 3 instead if it was kicked. So, Deep Analysis, 4 to cast, lets you draw 2 cards, and then you can flash it back. I was looking for all cards that could give you more usability. Being able to use them more than once is always a good key. Behold the Multiverse, so it's a 4 to cast instant, lets you scry 2 and then draw 2, and you can foretell to make it cheaper and spread it across 2 turns. Comparative Analysis, it gets cheaper if you've cast another spell for the turn. So if you have an opt, on your opponent's turn, you can opt and then do a comparative analysis, and then you'll have drawn 3 cards. So, Hieroglyphic Illumination, again, another 40 cast instant that draws 2 cards, but you can cycle it away for 1. So you get the option, do you want to draw 1 or draw 2? So it's always a nice little double option. Gush can be free, so you can return 2 islands you control to your hand, rather than pay its cost, which is 5, and draw 2 cards. We're going to go into the red looting cards that I've added. So Faceless Looting, obviously, draw 2, discard 2, and it flashes back. Cathartic Reunion, discard 2 cards, draw 3. Tormenting Voice, discard 1 card, draw 2. Throw of Possibilities, the instant version of all that, so you discard a card and draw 2 at instant speed. Desperate Ravings let you draw 2 cards and discard a card at random. That's kind of tricky, the random part, but you should have enough cards in your hand to protect whatever it is you're trying to search for. And again, has flashback for reusability. Cathartic Pyre, 2 to cast, you get to choose one. You can deal 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, so if that's your choosing, you can make it eliminate a threat, or you can discard up to 2 cards, and it says up to, and draw that many cards. So you can discard 1 card and draw a card, you can discard 2 cards and draw 2. Wild Guess, so as an additional cost, you have to discard a card and then draw 2 cards, but it's 2 red. Shattered Perception, this one lets you discard all the cards in your hand and draw that many cards, and it also has flashback. So if your hand just sucks, or if you're going for a wheel effect, and that's going to be the thing that wins you the game, always good. Seize the Spoils, as additional cost, again, it's 3 to cast, discard a card and draw 2 cards, only this one gives you a treasure token on top of that. Honor the God Pharaoh, so this one's the same thing, it's 3 to cast, discard a card as an additional cost, you draw 2 cards, there's a lot of them in here, and then you amass 1, which is you put a token into play that helps defend for you. Pirate's Pillage, this one's 4 to cast, but it lets you draw 2 cards and create 2 treasure tokens. And the last one's not really a draw card, it's more of a situational card for you. It lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library, and then you can put one of them into your hand, one of them on the bottom of your library, and then you can exile one of them, but you may play the exiled card. So technically, it's not card draw, so it doesn't trigger all the card draw effects, but it helps you situationally get to a card you need. That card is going to be very apparent very soon. I'll get to that in a second, but for now, this is what the instants are that were basically all card draw. So, and there's a reason for that. That's all Niv-Mizzet wants to do. In this deck, all you're trying to do is dig, dig, dig to get to your combos. This is going to be the defense section here. We're in blue, so we're going to do some counter magic, and we're going to do some destruction. Here's what I've chosen as far as the budgetary counter magic that can go into this deck and actually help you in Commander. Seal Sabotage lets you counter an artifact spell. Trust me, in Commander, artifacts are dangerous. You do want to have that ability. It's only 1 blue. You can also return 1 to your hand if you want to rescue one of your own, or if somebody's going to go off and you return theirs in response to everything, hope that you don't let them go off. Arcane Denial. I don't usually like to use Arcane Denial in Commander decks, but in a deck like this where drawing cards is key, you don't mind so much. So you counter a spell. Its controller can draw up to 2 cards, and let me tell you that there are a couple decks that really like when your opponent draws 2 cards. And then you draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Fits the theme of the deck. Remove Soul counters basically Commanders. Negate counters. Essentially, this is for countering somebody's combo pieces. Essence Scatter, again, and I should have ordered that correctly. Essence Scatter, obviously for threats or for opponent commanders. Prohibit is a card that gets no love. This is one of my favorite counter spells in the game. It's 2 to cast, and it counters a spell with converted mana cost 2 or less, and in a lot of games, there are a lot of threats that are 2 or less. But you can kick it for 4, and you can then counter a spell that's 4 or less, and that's probably like 75% of all magic cards are 4 or less. Obviously, Counterspell, the OG. Defensively, we're going to go into Frogify. Frogify is for your opponent's commanders usually. It enchants a creature. They lose all their abilities. It becomes a blue frog with base power and toughness 1/1. And basically, it just lets their commander sit there. Not as good as the white one that makes them indestructible. The Dark Steel Mutation or whatever it's called. Where it can just sit there and it just doesn't get to be killed. This one allows it to be killed. Raven form, you can exile an artifact or creature, and its controller will have to create a 1/1 flying token. You can foretell it to make it less. Aetherize, surprise. You get attacked with all these tokens that people are making now. And then you can just return them all, and basically if it's a token, it doesn't come back. Vandal Blast, obviously artifact destruction is key in a lot of situations. This one lets you overload it to destroy all of your opponent's artifacts. Shenanigans, more artifact destruction, but you get to dredge it. So this is casting more stuff. Now remember, Niv-Mizzet says whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you get to draw a card. You can dredge this out over and over to kill artifacts over and over, and continue to draw cards off Niv-Mizzet, which does damage. Blasphemous Act is my big defense card. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and then it deals 13 damage to each creature. Obviously, this is the board wipe for before you get your commander out. And then Propaganda is to make it so it's harder for them to attack you. So Simple, plain, all defense. Utility stuff that we have here. Surreal Memoir helps you get at least a random instant card back from your graveyard. It also has Rebound, which lets you cast it from your hand by exiling it as it resolves, and at the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. So it helps you get a couple of them back. Lightning Greaves is important here. you want to be able to protect your commander because he is going to be a target. This gives him Shroud. Make sure that you've got the combo piece on him before you do it, or if you have to, unequip it and then re-equip it just to get the combo piece on. That's risky. Or you have the option of Swiftfoot Boots, which gives him Hexproof, which means you can still put it on there. Also gives him Haste, but it equips for 1. Final card we're going to do is going to be the combo piece. Obviously, everybody should know this by now. It's Curiosity. So, Curiosity reads as an enchantment that says whenever an enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. And if you haven't seen the combo, it's whenever you draw a card, he deals a damage, and then whenever you deal damage, you draw a card. It's an infinite loop that you can wipe a board with. So, this is the combo that goes in every single Niv-Mizzet Parun deck ever made, or the other Niv that I included in here. So, that's the deck in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward. Draw as many cards as you can to get to your combo pieces of Curiosity, and then burn everybody off the board. And then your secondary ways to win are going to be swinging wide with your token army, or using the other options that you have here that aren't your commander, hoping that they don't kill him, which is the other Niv-Mizzet. So that's how you win with this deck. And now we're just going to go over some of the upgrades that I've selected that you can choose for it, and then we're going to get out of here. So let me get started on that right now. Alright, so I always start with lands for the upgrades. So I'm going to go over a couple of them. And I said that in the past I said I wouldn't show you the dual land section part of it, but for this one, this is for somebody else, so I have to show them. We're going to start off with, obviously, you want to do mana fixing, so you want better dual lands for your deck. You want to do something like Steam Vents, Sulphur Falls, or Scalding Tarn to fetch land. And I didn't mention like the OG duel because obviously this is a budget deck, and I'm going to assume, and this is a bad of me, but the person's not going to sit there and go buy Volcanic Island real quick. You know, it's not a cheap investment. Some other options you can do are like Desolate Lighthouse, Arcane Lighthouse, and Maze of Ith. And Maze of Ith is there just to stop other people from attacking you. The lighthouses are for making your opponent's other creatures targetable, or for drawing and discarding a card, because obviously you want to be able to discard and draw. And all these options that I'm going to suggest are because I either don't have them, or I've never had them. Some of them I've never had. Other options for upgrades for lands, Reliquary Tower, because you want the biggest hand you can possibly get. You're going to be drawing a ton of cards, so there's no reason not to give yourself no maximum hand size. Strip Mine, I said it earlier, I like to always put in a land destruction card in the lands, because you never know what your opponent's going to have. Gyre Reach Sanitarium, again, you want to be able to draw cards. Isolated Watchtower, that's a great option. I'll have that one up there so you can see that one, actually. Miko Koro, Center of the Sea. I haven't actually got my hands on these. I want this for a couple of my decks, actually. More card draw for you. Witch's Clinic is actually a pretty cool upgrade for this deck, too. I didn't pull one of those. It gives your commander lifelink, so he can ping people, and then lifelink will give you the life. It'll actually make you gain life. And then I'm going to be really, really funny about this. If you really want to spend a lot of money for a deck like Niv-Mizzet, there's a couple options you can do. Bazaar of Baghdad, or Library of Alexandria. Good luck. And then, of course, Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, because you really don't give a shit about your own creatures. So you want to make it as hard as possible for other people to have creatures. Now, again, that's me being funny. I mean, they're good options, but they're the most expensive options out there. So that's what I got for you for the lands. Normally, I don't like to be cheeky about things, but that one was just obviously, it was out there and I had to mention it. So we're going to move on to the ramp section. So like I mentioned with the ramp section while I was going over it on the deck part, there are not a lot of options in blue and red. So I'll give you what I can think of off the top of my head, but it's not the greatest. So you're going to start off with like a Wayfarer's Bauble, because it lets you at least put a land into play. Thought Vessel is a great option because you want to have no maximum hand size as often as possible. You want that redundancy. I don't have any extras right now, so I didn't get to include it in the deck. Surveyor Scope is an interesting one. I'm going to have it up there for you to read it, because it's actually quite convoluted. To talk about it, it basically lets you go get extra lands for each opponent that has more lands than you. Sword of the Animist. So you have a lot of tokens that you can sacrifice as fodder. It says whenever you attack with a creature, you can go get a land and put it into play. Should be good. Or even on Niv-Mizzet, because it's a flyer and not everybody uses flying creatures. Always a good option as well. And then Moon Silver Key is the final one I'm going to mention. It's a newer card, so I forgot about it until the last second. It helps you go get either an artifact that has a mana ability like a Soul Ring, or a basic land. So those are just the only options I could think of that reliably could go help you get ramp for a deck like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the creature section, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so for the dudes, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I didn't have any electrostatic fields in my collection. I must have used them for previous versions of the build that I sold. It's a great option because whenever you cast, I believe it's a non-creature spell, it deals with damage. It just follows the theme of a deck like this. I also didn't have any Stormkiln Artists, which actually they pose another win con with Stormkiln Artist. It helps create a lot of treasure tokens, and treasure tokens can become ramp for you, but they can also become a win con later, and I'll explain that in a second. Veyran, Voice of Duality, I also didn't have any extras of, and that's a really good option for a deck like this. I'll have it up there for you to read so you can see exactly what it does, but it's just a really, it's definitely a good option. Another one, Thassa's Oracle presents another win con. I know that people are complaining, and it's probably going to be banned at some point in time for Commander, but at the moment I can suggest it. It's a great option to add in a surprise win con. Consecrated Sphinx lets you draw 2 cards, either 1 or 2 cards whenever your opponents draw a card. Let's see what else we got here. God Eternal Kefnet helps you cast spells as you draw your first one for the turn, and at a discounted price too, so it's always great to be able to cast spells on top of casting spells. Please know that Niv-Mizzet also only works when casting and not copying. Keep that in mind. What else we got here? I don't know how to say his name, so I'm just going to call him Liar. It's Liar, Disciple of the Drowned. So you would remove all your counter magic from the deck if you do add him in, and add more draw spells, just because he lets you cast all your instants and sorceries from your grave. Really good option, especially if all you're trying to do is just draw till you get to your win con. We got here the Whirlpools. So I'll have all 3 of them up here so you can read them. But there's the Whirlpool Warrior, the Whirlpool Drake, and the Whirlpool Rider. Whenever you cast them, you can discard your hand to draw your hand, draw the same amount of cards. And one of them, I believe, sacrifices to do it again. I'll have them up there so you can read them. They really do help you cycle through your deck. Spell Seeker is another option you can do. It lets you go and search for an instant. If there's an instant you need at that particular moment, you can go ahead and get it. And then I mentioned a minute ago, another alternate win condition. Treasure tokens. You can actually do that. When you add Stormkiln Artist, you can also add things like Dockside Extortionist, Galazeth Prismari, or Goldspan Dragon. They all create a ton of treasure tokens, and then you can just flop on the table a Hellkite Tyrant that says whenever you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. Obviously, you know, it's an expensive option, but it's an option. So those are just a couple of the creatures that I'm going to suggest for you on this deck. Not much else I can say about it, so I'm just going to move on to the spell section. Alright, so as far as spells that you can do to upgrade the deck, you've got tutors. You've got things like Mystical Tutor, Solve the Equation, and Merchant Scroll. They all help you go get instants. Some help you get sorceries. They're great for being able to making you cast a spell to go get another spell that helps you draw cards, and really helps with Niv's ability. There's another way you can go about it too, though. So here's something that's a little interesting. In a deck like this, you can actually use the guys like Dizzy Spell, Muddle the Mixture, or Teleria West. They let you pay an amount of mana to go ahead and search for a card in your deck that has the same converted mana cost or mana value now. So you can go use Dizzy Spell to go get and grab your Curiosity, okay? So that's an option you can do. And for commons and uncommons, those things are expensive just because Transmute, the ability itself, is in blue, is very expensive. You've got counter magic upgrades. You can obviously upgrade your counter magic to things like Mana Drain, Force of Will for a free counter spell, or even the new Fierce Guardianship, the newest free counter spell in the market. They're very expensive. I believe Fierce Guardianship, as of this taping, is like $75, and that's expensive. And Force of Will, of course, is over $100. But I mean, Fierce Guardianship is new, but it's still limited in how much. It's still limited in its printing. You've got card draw upgrades you can do. You can do things that are like wheel effects. So you can do like Wheel of Fortune, which lets you drop your hand, or everybody drop their hand and you all draw 7. Windfall, again, makes everybody drop their hand and then you draw cards equal to the highest amount that was discarded. Tolarian Winds is a subversion of both of those. You've got Diviner's Portent, which is an X spell that helps you draw cards. It also lets you scry if you control your commander, I believe. And then Blue Sun Zenith is an option for an X draw spell because you draw X cards and then it shuffles back into your library. You've got Removal in blue and red. Chaos Warp, it's targeted removal. Rapid Hybridization and Pongify are also targeted removal. Reality Shift is an exile removal. And then you've got Red's Burn if you want to go that route, which is like things like Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, all those kind of spells. And then Blue's got the king of all... No, not really king of removal. It's got the biggest hated removal, which is Cyclonic Rift. So just a couple of options to upgrade the deck. Again, all those cards start to cost a lot of money. The original, the build that was given to me, they asked for more counter magic and not burn. So that's why I kind of went in the direction I went. But if you want to go in the direction of burn, those are some suggestions. I'm going to move on to the enchantments now. Some of those enchantments include things like Rhystic Study, which I know you asked for. I don't have any extras because I've already sold all the ones that I had extra. Plus, I think it's like a $25 card as of the making of this, so it would have bumped the price of this deck. Basically, it would have made it so this deck was literally just all cheap draw spells and then a Rhystic Study. You got Mystic Remora, which kind of does the same thing as Rhystic Study, but with a drawback of cumulative upkeep. 1,000 Year Storm, remember that copying spells doesn't trigger Niv-Mizzet, but when you draw cards, it does. So you can use 1,000 Year Elixir. It basically, or I'm sorry, not that 1,000 Year Storm. Sorry, wrong name. They're both cards that trigger abilities. 1,000 Year Storm basically gives all your stuff Storm. Metallurgic Summonings and Shark Typhoon are cards that when you cast it, non-creature spells or instants and sorceries, it creates more tokens, which is hordes. And obviously that gives you your alternate win con of going wide. Improbable Alliance is another one you can use to create tokens as well. Omniscience lets you cast everything for free. Obviously that's always good to do. Fiery Emancipation will start to make your things, all your damage from red sources, I think it is specifically, hit a lot harder. I think it triples the damage, so every time you draw a card, he does 3 damage instead. And then the last thing I would add in here for redundancy, for curiosity, is Ophidian's Eye. It's the same exact card, only it has flash, and it costs 1 more to cast. So those are a couple of the enchantments that I would add as upgrades for this deck, and we're going to move on to the artifacts. So a couple of the artifacts that I would go ahead and choose for upgrade options here. Something like Primal Amulet, it reduces the cost of all instants by 1, and then it flips over, and then whenever it turns into a land that says whenever you use the mana from that land to cast an instant or sorcery, you can copy the spell. Obviously, quite in a deck of mostly instants or sorceries, that's pretty good. The Magic Mirror is an artifact you can use as well. You put a counter on it, and then you draw a card equal during your upkeep. You put a counter on it, and then you draw cards equal to the amount of counters on it. Obviously, you're trying to draw cards to deal damage, so that's good. It also makes it so you have no maximum hand size. Always good, especially when it keeps making you draw cards. A fun one is Teferi's Puzzle Box. Teferi's Puzzle Box says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you take your hand, put it on the bottom of your library, and draw as many cards +1 as you had. I'm sorry, not +1. As many cards as you had, and then you go to your draw phase and draw another one. A lot of card drawing there. Basically, it cycles through your deck quickly. What else we got here? Aetherflux Reservoir. So for every spell you cast, which you've got a lot of cheap draw cards here. For each spell you cast, you gain a life for each one before it. And then it's an alternate win con again, where it can literally pay 50 life to do 50 damage. Remember, if you have Witch's Clinic out, you give Niv lifelink. Every time you do a damage from drawing a card, you gain that life. And then obviously every time you cast a spell to draw a card, you gain life each time you do everything. And then you'll have 50 life to spend to kill somebody off the board pretty quickly. What else we got here? Sensei's Dividing Top goes in almost every commander deck that exists, just because it lets you draw a card. It helps you cycle through your deck. It's just a great card. Folio of Fancies, it can make everybody draw cards if that's your thing. Not the greatest suggestion, but it's still a suggestion for if you want to do something like that. Also, Mills cards if you want to do that as well. Basilisk Collar is a great one. Basilisk Collar and actually Gorgon's Head are both options that you can equip him with. Every time he deals a damage to something, it gives it Death Touch, meaning that it kills whatever creature it hits for 1 damage. Great options here. Grafted Exoskeleton is a little cheeky here. I didn't include it, I was going to, but I realized I didn't have any. It's an equipment that gives the creature Infect. So basically, now you've taken Niv needing to only do 10 damage to somebody to wipe them off the board instead of 40. Great option, especially in a deck like this. So that's one I would absolutely go hunting for. And then Helm of the Host, because more Nivs is more gooder. So that's my artifact suggestion. That's my suggestion for artifact upgrades. Next we go on to the Planeswalkers, and then we'll get out of here. Nope, I lied. We're going to go into Walkers, then combos, and then we'll get out of here. First one I would suggest is Narset Parter of Veils, because if you do wheels, it prevents your opponent from being able to draw the cards off the wheels. Jace Widower of Mysteries, obviously, because if you draw out your deck, it's an alternate win con for you. Saheeli Sublime Artificer is a good option as well. Jace Memory Adept lets you draw cards, so obviously that's one of the Planeswalkers you could use. Jace the Mind Sculptor, because it's Brainstorm for 0, drawing 3 cards a turn, even if you're putting 2 of them back. It triggers Niv-Mizzet 3 times. You got Ral, the Izzet Viceroy. Whenever you cast spells, it deals damage, always good. And you're casting a lot of spells here. Dak Faden, I don't really suggest very often. It's not the greatest suggestion, but it's an option for you as well. Kasima, the Enigmatic Mentor, it just basically would be something that helps you protect your commander and all your little tokens from being targeted. It's a secondary ability of drawing a card, discarding a card, just fits into the theme. Tamio, the Moon Stage. I'm sorry, I'm going to suggest this for every deck that's blue going forward, just because it's probably one of my favorite, if not the absolute favorite commander in Magic. Being able to make it so you have no maximum hand size, and then every time a card goes to your graveyard, being able to just come back to your hand. I mean, Jesus. Now that would be great. Chandra, Torch of Defiance. I don't suggest her often. Her 0 ability of giving you mana is always nice, and then her other abilities really help out. I'm going to have her up there so you can read all 4 of her abilities. And then Jaya Ballard is also an interesting option. I'll have that one up there for you to see as well. Its uptick is to give you 3 red, but only to cast instants. Obviously, that's what you're doing, so great option. So again, I'll have them all up there for you to see. As far as the rest of the deck suggestions, I have one more to go, and that's combos, and we'll get to that right now. I don't really care if you're going to groan when you see this, but I'm going to make one suggestion for a combo, and that's it. ISO Rev and Grape Shot. Now, ISO Rev obviously being Isochron Scepter, and the Rev part being Dramatic Reversal. It creates infinite mana and infinite cast triggers, okay? So casting a spell, triggering Niv, doing a damage, giving you, if you have enough mana rocks, you have infinite mana. So if you can produce 3 mana from mana rocks, you get infinite mana. The point here is to just keep triggering Niv so that you can keep doing infinite damage. So if you really want to be cheeky with it, you add Grape Shot to that, which, you know, for every time you cast a spell, you storm. And if you get enough storm triggers, you can Grape Shot, which also does 1 damage per copy, storming people off the board. So that's the combo I'm going to suggest. The Isochron Scepter is rather expensive. Dramatic Reversal is actually for a common or uncommon very expensive. And then obviously Grape Shot was reprinted recently, but still it's like a $2 card. So that's the combo I'm going to suggest for this deck. That's all the upgrades I'm going to give you for now. If you have any other ones that you would like to go over, you can go ahead and contact me. But for now, we're going to get out of here real soon and go from there. So to the person who bought the deck, I originally was going to mention your name, but I'm just going to say to the customer because I don't want to put people's names out there. I want to thank you for purchasing the deck. It actually gave me the ability to make a Commander video for the week, which I didn't have planned for because I was unfortunately sick for the last couple weeks and I got behind. So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity for that. I hope you enjoy the deck. This is actually one of my favorite ones. This is the second time I built it. I may eventually build one of this for this color combo for myself. I don't know yet. Other than that, I want you to do me a favor. Please like the video. I did spend a lot of time on this while I was sick, getting this portion of it ready. I just didn't really film it or put the deck together while I was sick. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I have plenty of content for you to watch. I do a pack opening video every day. Every week I do a deck video, whether or not it's a budget brew for Commander, for non-Commander, for Kitchen Table. I try to get something out every week on top of the pack openings. And share this out to somebody who may be looking to build a Niv-Mizzet deck. For the person buying it, obviously, you're not going to share it out. You're going to do it for yourself because you want to see how the deck is and how it runs. And I think I've given you plenty of options to get it done. If not, go ahead and contact me. Excuse me. Contact me. Got 3 ways to do so. Got the Facebook page. You can send me a message there. Dry throat. You've got email. You can do it at bluebearsgames@gmail.com. Or you can put a comment in the section below. Tell me how to contact you, and I'll go from there. Those are the easiest ways to do so. Other than that, I won't take up any more of your time. Do me a favor, enjoy your weekend, but come back next week for another Blues Budget Brew. I don't know if it's going to be Commander or if it's going to be a Battle Brew, Kitchen Table deck or not. But remember to join me next week. Have a good one. See you then. Peace.